The storm didn't feel real at first. It felt like a nightmare slipping into daylight, like a scene in a movie where everything suddenly slows down and the world forgets how to hold itself together. I still remember the sound of metal shrieking as the waves slammed into our boat, lifting it like a paper toy and tossing it into the chaos. I remember the taste of salt in my throat, the cold shock of the ocean swallowing me whole, and the desperate fear that this was the end. But the image that refuses to leave me, the one that carved itself into my memory forever, was seeing my boss, Elena Hartman, clinging to a broken piece of the boat, her eyes wide with the terrifying realization that we were completely, utterly alone in the middle of nowhere. The news that followed still echoes in my mind, her trembling voice carried across the stormy air, "If no one comes, will you stay with me?" And in that moment, surrounded by violent waves and a sky tearing itself apart, I understood that this wasn't just about survival. It was about two people whose lives were about to change forever on a deserted island that neither of us had ever planned to see. White medium star. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that touch the heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles to help this story reach more souls. White medium star. When I woke up on the shore, the world was unbearably silent. The storm had vanished, leaving behind a heavy humidity and a faint crackling sound from broken branches scattered across the sand. My head throbbed, my throat burned with thirst, and everything felt unfamiliar, too bright, too sharp, too unreal. Then I saw her. Elena was kneeling near me, her clothes soaked and torn, her hair tangled with seaweed and sand. The powerful, confident CEO I worked for had vanished. In her place was simply a woman, frightened, exhausted, and struggling to stay calm. She told me later that she'd dragged me onto the beach, refusing to let the waves pull me away. Something about that knowledge, her refusing to give up on me even when she herself was barely holding on, made everything inside me shift. I had always respected her, admired her even. But now, seeing her like this, vulnerable and human, something deeper began to take root. The first hours on the island felt like walking through fog. We had no idea where we were, no supplies besides whatever washed ashore, and no guarantee that help was coming. The island stretched quietly around us, a dense forest, rocky cliffs, and a long stretch of beach where the sea breathed steadily like a sleeping giant. We searched for anything useful, gathering driftwood, stray pieces of the boat, and soggy food containers that had already been ruined by seawater. Still, we kept moving, even when fear threatened to break us. When we found a small freshwater spring hidden behind a cluster of palm trees, we cried, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the soft, exhausted way that comes when relief is too heavy to hold inside. In the days that followed, survival became our routine. We built a shelter using fallen branches and vines, awkward at first but slowly improving as we figured out what worked and what didn't. We learned how to dry seaweed for quick energy, how to crack coconuts without wasting the liquid inside, how to collect rainwater, and even how to scare off small animals that tried to steal our scraps at night. Every small victory felt monumental. Every mistake felt like a threat. But through it all, something unexpected grew between us, not romance at first, not attraction, but a strange, deep trust. The kind of trust that only forms when two people face the same darkness and decide, over and over again, to pull each other toward the light. Elena started opening up in quiet moments, when we were watching the sun rise from the edge of the forest, or when we were resting after long hours of work. She told me things I never expected. How lonely leadership could be, how she'd spent years building walls to protect herself, how she'd forgotten what it meant to slow down, to breathe, to feel. The island stripped away her perfection, leaving someone honest and warm, someone who laughed more freely, cried more openly, and cared more deeply than I'd ever seen back in the office. And in turn, she listened to me, really listened, about my fears, my past, my dreams. It was strange, sharing so much not because we had time but because time suddenly meant something different. On the island, every moment mattered. Every emotion mattered. Every heartbeat mattered. But survival wasn't easy. There were nights when storms returned without warning, drenching our shelter and sending us scrambling for higher ground. There were mornings when our food ran dangerously low, and we had to forage farther into the island, facing unfamiliar plants and unpredictable wildlife. There were days when the heat was so intense that even breathing felt difficult, and nights when the cold cut through our thin clothes like knives. Once, Elena slipped and cut her leg badly while climbing over rocks near the shore. I remember the panic that surged through me, the fear of infection, the dread of losing the one person who kept me anchored. I tore part of my shirt to wrap the wound, boiled water to sterilize it, and stayed awake all night just to make sure she was still breathing steadily. She told me later that she had never felt so protected in her life. As the days turned into weeks, something in the air between us changed, slowly, then all at once. The way she looked at me lingered a little longer. The way she smiled carried a softness that wasn't there before. The silence between us shifted from necessity to comfort. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and painted the sky in deep gold and orange, she rested her head on my shoulder. No words were spoken. None were needed. It was the moment our hearts quietly recognized each other, even if neither of us dared to say it out loud. But fate wasn't done testing us. One afternoon, thick clouds gathered without warning, swallowing the sky in a matter of minutes. The storm that hit us was stronger than the first, violent, relentless, punishing. Our shelter collapsed under the wind, the ocean surged furiously, and trees swayed dangerously as if on the verge of snapping. We held on to each other as lightning split the sky and rain hammered our skin. The storm didn't feel like weather, it felt like the island itself was trying to crush us. When it finally ended, leaving the world soaked and trembling, our spirits felt just as battered. That was the night she asked again, her voice barely audible beneath the dripping leaves and the quiet hum of the ocean. "If no one comes, will you stay with me?" It wasn't fear speaking this time, it was something deeper, something fragile and painfully sincere. She wasn't asking about survival. She was asking about us. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I pulled her close, letting her know without speaking that I wasn't going anywhere. Not that night. Not ever. The next morning, as if fate had been listening, we saw something on the horizon, a distant speck, barely visible through the morning haze. A rescue boat. Months of hope, pain, fear, and quiet love rushed through us at once. We waved frantically, set fire to a signal pile we'd built long ago, and watched with racing hearts as the boat gradually changed direction toward us. Relief washed over Elena's face, but so did something else, something like worry. Because leaving the island didn't just mean being saved, it meant returning to the world where everything was different, complicated, full of expectations and consequences. When the rescuers finally reached us, they wrapped us in blankets, handed us water, and tried to rush us back to safety. But before stepping onto the boat, Elena took one last look at the island, the place that had broken us down, rebuilt us, and tied our souls together in ways we never expected. Her hand found mine, steady and certain. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. Everything had already been said in the silence of those long nights, in the fear we survived, in the trust we built, and in the moments where our hearts beat in sync beneath the endless island sky. Returning to the real world wasn't easy. There were questions, interviews, investigations, and endless attention. People wanted to know how we survived, what we ate, how we endured. But no one asked about the bond that had formed between us, something too delicate, too personal, too sacred to share with curious strangers. And yet, it followed us everywhere. In the way she looked for me in crowded rooms. In the way I always knew when she needed reassurance. In the way silence between us still spoke louder than words. Weeks after our rescue, on a quiet evening in her office, the same office where she once commanded respect with an iron presence, she told me something that made my heart shift all over again. She said she missed the island. She missed the simplicity, the honesty, the closeness. She missed us as we were there, unfiltered, unafraid, undeniably connected. And she admitted that the question she asked on the island wasn't just a desperate plea from someone afraid of dying. It was a truth she hadn't allowed herself to face in the real world. A truth she was finally ready to embrace. Yellowheart, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles. Your support helps keep these emotional, meaningful stories alive. Yellowheart.